Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Delighted to have you back for this afternoon. Delighted to see so many people in the room. Uh, Please do say hi and let us know what you had for lunch if you happen to be in Europe. I know we have people from across the world. Oh, sorry, I had my mute. I was listening back to myself. It's not good. Um, so please do tell us where you're calling in from. And did you manage to do some lunch today? I've not managed to get to my lunches yet. If you're in the US, good morning. Lovely to see you. And if you're in Asia and South Asia and so on, then good evening to you in the Middle East. Delighted to be able to spend some more time with you today. Really looking forward to this session. One of the things we were talking about earlier on in the first session from Egler was, well, can we use AI for more than just producing content? But actually, one of the things is it's really interesting, I think, is that how can we use it to make content better and how we can use this for better content. So for the session today, we've got Ben Wynne Simmons. He's the Senior Product Director from Veed, looking at, well, just beyond the buzz for AI and just looking at some of the video and how we can use AI with video in a better way. So that's what we're going to be going through for this afternoon session. Ben's promised me that it's not going to be an hour. It will probably be less than that. Again, these sessions are only as good as the interaction we get. So please do make sure you put plenty of questions in. I can see the comments and I'm really annoyed now because people are having so much nice lunches and I've not had any yet. So lovely to see you all. Lovely to see you from all over the place. Hello, Trisha from Connecticut. Nice to see you from the US today. Ben, over to you. I'm really keen to see what you've got for us today.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Andrew. Yes, my name is Ben. I work at Veed, and just in case you've not come across Veed, Veed is the world's largest online video editing platform. So I am very much going to talk about AI use in content video creation, but I can answer a bunch of questions on tech and AI generally. I'm a senior product director, so I'm kind of constantly looking at what's coming down the pipeline. So keen to hear from you throughout this talk, and we'll have a decent chunk of time at the end to have any Q&A. So without further ado, AI video beyond the buzz. A long time ago, in March 2023, it's kind of mad to think how quickly this has all progressed. OpenAI released ChatGPT-4, and very quickly, I think you're all aware, it became a household name. Sam Altman became a household name, and it, sparked so much interest, so many conversations that people such as Elon Musk and Steve Wozniak of Apple were so concerned for our future and AI and the imminent maybe apocalypse that they asked for a 6-month moratorium on the development of AI. But if you fast forward to the present day, that didn't happen at all. We got ChatGPT became the fastest growing startup ever with 1.5 billion views per month. Google launched Gemini, but actually, frankly, there's another kind of 3, 4, 5 equivalents to ChatGPT that are all vying for the top spot. And Elon Musk himself founded his own version, XAI, so he didn't even abide by his own moratorium either. But what's all the buzz about? And I'm going to talk to you specifically here about video and the way that video is used in training, of course. But so AI can do a huge amount of things. And actually, AI has been around for a long time. But what made it famous much more recently was the generative AI, wave of generative AI. And in the video world, this is not so much about large language models, actually. It's quite often about image generation. And here are some examples that hit the headlines. On the left, you've got the Pope dressed in Balenciaga Pope. Still, I think, my favorite image of the whole wave of AI-generated images. It sparked a lot of controversy, but personally, I think he looks great. And then in the top right, you've got an innocent picture of people walking along a street in evening dress. But of course, if you squeeze your eyes and squint at them, you will see a subliminal message hidden saying, obey. And then in the bottom right corner, you will see the winner of the Colorado Art Fair, which was, of course, an AI generated image. Once you've got images, well, it doesn't take a genius to say, well, let's put a series of images back to back, and then you've got video. And here you've got the kind of early generative AI video to video creation. So on the left, there's a street scene, which is being transformed into a cloudy kind of animation, into cartoon, into a cyberpunk style, all from the base input video. And on the right, you've got a pile of laundry, which is being transformed into the mountains of Mordor. Taking this one step further, and I think some of you may have seen this as well. So there's previous examples of starting from video as an input and getting video as an output. This is a pure text prompt to video. And this is OpenAI's Sora model. And, when they released this, the world went wild again. Some of you may have seen it. Previously, to generate an image like this, you'd basically have to use an immense amount of computer graphics technology. Modeling the cherry blossom as it came off the tree would be extremely time consuming and costly. And now you can do it with a simple paragraph or even less of text. So, I think the buzz is clear. I think we've all seen the buzz, and it is amazing. You can't not be amazed by all that. But is it actually useful in what we're doing? It kind of doesn't work for me. Most of that stuff is amazing. It's great fun, and it's great at generating cherry blossom in the snow images. But it's not doing what I need it to do. It's not helping me with my job. And it turns out, even with AI, I don't have a career in modeling. This is the result of me spliced with a Balenciaga model in a jacket, and you get this rather hideous content. And I think this is actually, a lot of people have this experience with AI. When you see it on the news, when you see it in the press, it's often the cherry picked, the very best outcomes. And there's been a kind of 1,000 generations, 99% of which might be terrible. And then, of course, the one that catches the viral meme network of the internet is one that actually happened to work very well. But a lot of the time it doesn't. And it doesn't necessarily help us with a specific job. So you get this situation where everyone's heard about AI. Everyone was kind of quite willing, certainly everyone I speak to is willing to use it, but then they kind of don't know how to use it, and they give it a go and they kind of resort back to, just kind of the old ways of doing things. And it's just not for me. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about beyond the buzz, what's actually really valuable, what problems should AI be fixing, specifically, obviously, in the video and training space. Something that I think probably, everyone knows implicitly, but it's worth stating this. I think we know videos are often better than text. Very much the audience is typically video first over text or presentation. People watch an enormous amount of video a week, as much as up to 17 hours has been reported in one study. Video is also proven by social media to be more engaging. It's no accident that all of the platforms have essentially become more and more video based, from Instagram switching to video. You've got YouTube, and then YouTube Shorts and TikTok, etc. And even Twitter's got a heavily kind of video element now. And that's simply because it gets more engagement, more clicks, more watch time. So our audience kind of wants this type of content. And then the bottom right box is actually, I think, the one that's not so well known, but actually is incredibly important, is it's much better for memory and information retention. And this is true for marketing as well as training. At the end of the day, we're producing videos because we either want them to learn about our sales message or our marketing message, understand the product better, but also if you're doing training videos, you want them to learn essentially and remember information about their training. And so people, I think, have a much better memory retention and much better engagement and much better results if they have a video option. It's not to say that video should be the only option, and some people prefer to read, but giving people the option is often, so that they can pick and choose is often the better outcome. So why aren't we doing this? And I'm going to take a little bit of a poll here. I'd like to know, how often do you maybe create PowerPoints versus how often do you create videos? So in a kind of given month, do you create one PowerPoint a month, or then one video a month, or whatever the suitable time frame is for you guys? I think Andrew's going to help me with some comments, but just to get a feel for like how many videos are you creating a month versus PowerPoint?
Thank you very much. I'm really interested to see how people are producing video. We've had some really interesting comments and conversations about different tools in the chat. If you can actually, within the chat, just tell us, how often are you producing video? In terms of PowerPoint and so on. Peter says almost never using PowerPoint, and much more video over PowerPoint. Jonathan, one PowerPoint for 10 videos. Stephen, no videos at all in his L&D department. And now everybody's responding. This is what happens, you see. You ask the question, feed comes through for people because there's so many dozens and dozens of hundreds of people who are in the room. So what we got, 3 to 4 videos a month, rarely a PowerPoint, says Rebecca. One PowerPoint for approximately 10 videos again, says Chris. Susie Stringer, about 4 a day.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Yeah. Jamil says nowhere quiet to do it, but probably be doing one a week if the quiet space permitted. So there's, I think we're probably going to be talking about that in terms of the how we produce that video as well. Never using PowerPoint, says Susie. She doesn't use PowerPoint to produce those 4 videos. Much more PowerPoint, says Louise, but moving towards video. So let's put it this way. I think the landscape is mixed is probably the answer.
Yeah.
You've got people who are doing no video to people who are doing loads of video.
Well, from that selection of comments, Andrew, I'm used to talking to an audience of people that video is an optional extra, and maybe sometimes, and webinars and classroom training is done far more frequently, and therefore kind of PowerPoint documents. But maybe you guys are far more advanced than me and hang out in better circles. So I'm genuinely impressed.
There's a couple of great comments as well. So does context matter, says Samantha, which I think is a really good question. So we will pick that up because, I would say for training, we use the occasional video, but for live learning, it would always tend to be PowerPoint rather than video. And then we've also got a comment I saw here. We would create video more, says Neil, but we're so reliant on the capability of the network and the infrastructure to be able to support it as well. So some of the reasons why people don't, I think, is interesting as well. So again, I know we're going to pick some of that stuff up, but really useful. I think we've got a really good mixed audience today.
Great. Yes, I think just to pick off one of those questions as we're here, I think the context does matter. Of course, it does. If you've got something that, is innately visual, and particularly if it's kind of requires some understanding of a 3D space or interior design or design elements, or of kind of describing how to use a certain piece of machinery, which doing in words is virtually impossible, then video, is a clear winner. But there are situations where a slower paced kind of, people are able to digest information in their own time, and a kind of a more descriptive document is the better situation. So absolutely context appropriate. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that you guys are so advanced in video production. Cool. I will continue. So the real challenge, some people were touching on this, is typically what we hear back is we would like to make video, but frankly, it's expensive to produce, particularly if you want good quality video. So you can just record your screen when you're doing a kind of a Google Meets or a Zoom call. However, the quality tends to be not great, and if you're a viewer, then it might not be the most engaging video you've ever seen. So there's a spectrum of what video is really, and doing kind of the higher end video can get exorbitantly expensive. $10,000 per video is not unheard of, particularly if you've got an actor in a studio. The other thing is it's slow to produce. People can trot out a presentation, they can trot out an email or a Notion document very, very quickly themselves, one person, but getting a kind of a script ready, getting all the various different parts of a video into place, then the post-production, the editing, etc., it takes a long time. And then often the third one is something that people don't realize the cost of, but actually it's quite a large cost, particularly if you're doing training videos or kind of how-to product videos. Making changes is hard. And what do I mean by that? Once you've created a video, if one piece of that video changes, you've got to go back and kind of remake the whole video. Whereas in text, you can just delete that section of text and put a new key point in. Okay, and I'm just going to talk about, we don't want to just make any video. I've just touched on that. We don't want to just record our screen and send it to people. That's easy to make, but terrible. You won't get the engagement metrics and you won't get the information retention that you can with video. So it needs to be a kind of a minimum quality benchmark we also need to hit with AI. So I thought I'd just spend a little bit of time sharing my or Veed's expertise about what we see people doing and what we see people doing successfully. And one of the things that actually we notice is quite interesting is people tend to be quite reflective, or can be, and they kind of look at the videos that they've produced and they kind of work out, well, this one's good and this one's bad. But I strongly suggest, if you haven't done this already, to go and look at the world's most engaging videos, and we know what they are. They are statistically proven on the internet. So you can see which ones get more clicks, more engagement, and there is a certain formula to it, and you can see which ones are kind of rising to the top of social algorithms. And there's a huge array of different styles. And some of them, I've just picked a few here. These are a few of my favorites. There are plenty more, but I encourage you to kind of have a look at these if you haven't already. Veritasium does a lot of physics and science and mathematical stuff. He's in the bottom right there. It's quite technical, quite complicated, and yet he has a great way of explaining visually. He has a great presentation style, a great pace to his videos, which is something that's quite important to keep interest throughout the video, not just in the first 30 seconds. People you see these click metrics where people watch 30 seconds and they drop off. Their interest is gone and they're looking at their phone. So I'd advise, he's got a kind of a classic style of doing kind of almost documentary style of training videos. Something completely different in the top right is Xander Whitehurst. He does very much the social media version. It's very much portrait, not landscape video, and it's very much micro-learning, bite-sized social media type stuff. And it's brilliant. He talks a lot about how to use Figma. Figma is a piece of design software, if you don't know what it is. But if you are interested in Figma, his kind of 20-second, 30-second bursts, micro-learning, are really, really addictive. And you can just watch 20 of them back to back very quickly, and you feel like, a pretty good expert on Figma. So you go from zero to quite knowledgeable. And he's got loads of great tips. So I highly recommend looking at his style and how he does stuff. It's very kind of quite low budget. It's him in his attic, as you can see there in the top right, but it's good to get an understanding of. And then the third one I recommend, James Hoffman, who has quite a minimalist style. It's just him talking to camera. The reason I mentioned that is it's quite low cost in terms of time and editing. So once you've set up a nice studio environment, you can see him in the bottom there with his nice bookshelf looking well lit and talking to camera. But once you've got that set up, it's a good way to produce a series of high quality videos. But all of these videos, take a huge amount of work, and this is a classic video editing timeline. You see all these different cuts and these different pieces flying in and out, animations, keyframes, and the very sweaty guy in the top left, kind of forced to make it all work. And actually, one of the things you do see is a lot of these videos have at least one edit every 10 seconds, and that sounds like a lot, but actually if you watch it, there's always some kind of scene change, a slight zoom in, an animation, some text pops up, and that's not an accident. That is required to keep your viewers engaged throughout. People have an expectation, and people talk about kind of rhythm to videos. You don't want to get to a situation, hopefully I'm not doing it now, where I'm kind of monologuing at you for 30 minutes to an hour. You will definitely get bored and turn off. If you've got something constantly changing in the subject matter, but also visually on screen, it keeps people engaged for longer. So there's a lot of work to these things. And there's also a bit of a recipe of things you should be thinking about when creating videos. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but if you want, I can send the presentation afterwards, or you can take a screenshot. But these are the things actually all of the top videos nearly have to different degrees. They nearly always have highlighted and animated text, captions and subtitles, yes, but also bouncing text to have their key bullet points. They have great audio. Having poor audio is inexcusable. It's one of the biggest things that will put people off your video. Always got good lighting. High frequency of edits. So yes, 1 per 5 seconds, 1 per 10 seconds is what I've just been talking about. They switch back between voiceovers, talking heads, lots of different changes in shots, and a bunch of other things. Okay, so this is where you got this huge problem. Like, we want to make videos. We want to make not just any video, a good video, but you see the complexity and all the effort that needs to go into making a good video. So these are some of the useful AI features that we see happening at Veed. The first of which actually is, kind of sometimes overlooked, but video cleanup. I think this is just stopping your video being a bad video. If you got bad audio, as I mentioned earlier, people won't listen, people won't stay engaged. So having some kind of background noise removal is a must-have. You can get versions of this that will actually enhance your voice, so it's not sounding like I've got a high-quality microphone. The other thing, things upscaling quality, you can't have pixelated images. Everyone knows that, but you can get AI to enhance them, and it crystallizes the pixels and makes things look much sharper. In the bottom left, you see eye contact correction. Now, this is classic for when you're doing webinars like I am right now. If you guys can see me, there's a little camera right in the middle of my screen. But of course, I'm never quite looking at that. I'm just looking just off to the side, or I'm looking up, to the left, reading my notes. The problem with that is if you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and they're kind of looking over your shoulder constantly, it's very hard to have a conversation. And the same thing happens when you're watching a video. If you haven't got people's eyes looking directly at you, you just naturally think they're not talking to you and you look away. And so there's a little bit of AI that doesn't do very much, but it just tweaks your pupils and points them directly at the camera. Background removal, I think, most of you guys are very familiar with that, and blurring faces, particularly if you haven't got permission to show people, etc., etc. You can do kind of motion tracking, people tracking, all that kind of stuff. The next key thing is subtitles, and having videos without subtitles these days is almost inexcusable. It's so easy to auto-generate them now, taking an audio file and transcribing it into text. It's done incredibly quickly, 20 times faster nowadays. It used to be manually typed out, and the accuracy's gone through the roof. So I think it's something like 98% accurate, and it's very easy just to change the 1 or 2 words that are inaccurate. Subtitles have been shown to increase watch time 80%. So, if you're wanting to make sure that people watch your entire length of your video, it's a must-have. I think most people understand that quite a lot of viewers will be in a busy office, open plan. They might not have their headphones with them. And so you've got to have some text, otherwise they just simply cannot take it in. And then, it's legally required these days, particularly in Canada, if you're working in a corporate, but also in the UK or in the US, if you are in a public sector body, it's just an accessibility rule. So it's becoming expected and required. And of course, you can go a couple of steps beyond that with AI. It's not just about transcribing, but you can translate it into different languages, and you can animate it just to make it a bit more engaging, put some emphasis behind keywords and make the keywords pop up. You can do all this with Veed. Moving on to the next biggest problem with video creation is, where do I get the raw video from? And sometimes people have got a great studio set up. Other times, you haven't got, you want to chop and change between different takes on a video, but you've only got a certain amount of video. So this is why AI is becoming incredibly useful in terms of asset generation. So it can generate music in the background, which instantly makes everything sound a bit more rich and professional. It can generate the image and videos, as I've shown you earlier. You probably don't want to use it as your main video, but certainly as a bit of a background snippet or to make a visual joke, it's very, very useful. So it replaces stock video in many ways. you can get much better versions of stock video, much more specific to your needs. And then if you're doing anything on YouTube, you'll need a thumbnail, because that's what people click on, and that's what gets the clicks ultimately. So it can even generate a thumbnail for you. Moving on to avatars. Now, this one tends to split the room. I think some people love them. Some people think they're a bit robotic, not quite realistic, can't quite trust them, don't quite like them. My take on avatars is, whatever you may think about them now, the industry is progressing so fast that in 6 months they will be completely different. And I would happily take a bet with anyone that it's going to be a struggle to differentiate them from real actors in about 6 months. Definitely in 12, but a decent bet in 6. So, what is the benefit of avatars? Why use avatars? Well, obviously, it saves you the actor cost, the organization, logistics, production, cost of getting people to a location. It saves you the studio cost, the lighting, even the makeup. Making sure that I've cut my beard for this kind of thing. And you can just type something to generate the video. And coming back to my earlier point, if you can type something to generate the video, then maintaining the video is that much easier. If something changes, if the script changes, if your boss says strike this, if the legal team says you're no longer allowed to say that, or you've got to update it, you can just change the text, regenerate, and the actor's going to say it in exactly the same voice, in the same lighting, in the same style, and it will just look seamless. And a little note on the bottom there, we've got personalized instant avatars coming. So this is something where you can create yourself, or if you are the person speaking. Now, this is where it gets slightly spooky. I'm happy to have a chat about this later on, about ethics, or whether you like it or not. I suspect what we'll see is a kind of cyborg, where I can do a video, but if I don't like a section of it, I can just retype it, and the avatar Ben will then kind of just do those filler words for me. Moving on to dubbing, related to avatars, related to translations. Again, if you've got an international market, or if you've got training for people where English is not their first language, or you've got a distributed workforce, it's a no-brainer. Translations are now so good. Even things, metaphors used to be a stumbling block for translations, where it would do a literal translation of a metaphor, which just doesn't work in another language. Now AI is good enough to understand the metaphor and translate and pick an appropriate metaphor in another language, which is incredible. Again, never perfect, but it will do 98% of the heavy lifting, and then you can pay for somebody in that native language, a native speaker, to come in and just correct the few words where it's got it wrong. And so a number of these technologies are kind of touching on this idea that you can take a video and get a transcription out of it, subtitles, captions, and doing the opposite. You type in and you get a video. And this is bringing on, a wave of text-based editing. You can write a video, essentially, create it from scratch. You can ask AI to edit your video. So say you've got a very long, waffly script, and hopefully I'm not doing that now, but inevitably you say something, you're like, oh, I don't want that in future. I'm coughing, for instance. Cut out all the coughs, cut out all the ers and the ums and the rs, and Magic Cut will just come and splice it all together for you. And you've got Video GPT, where you can ask it to generate a video completely from scratch. This is something that Veed's produced. It's hosted on OpenAI, so you can go to OpenAI and ChatGPT and use it, and basically it will create you a script, it will create you avatars, background music, animations, absolutely everything from scratch. So you go from zero to something incredibly quickly, and then your job is not producing the something, it's actually just kind of curating the something, maybe deleting sections of it, which makes the whole process much faster. So I'm talking a lot there about the types of features that we see, about AI, the things it can do, etc. But I think it's more fundamental than that. I think it's actually changing the way we work, specifically with video. And this is worth thinking about. What happens when video creation becomes easy? I think we very much moved to this culture of show, don't tell. It's something we talk about doing quite often, but actually don't do nearly as much as we probably should. It comes back to the point which I think we were talking about earlier. Would you produce a Word document? Would you do a PowerPoint or a video, or possibly all three? And I think increasingly it's going to be at least 2 of those, if not 3 of those. It's increasingly, I think, again, you guys seem to be well adept at video, and so probably are well aware of this. But it used to be the remit of the video team to create videos. We'd have specialized people just doing the video editing, and I think that's changing a lot now. A lot of people expect to edit their own videos. They see it happening in social media. Why can't I do it? I can edit a PowerPoint. It's the same kind of idea, and it's as easy as a PowerPoint. And then, once we've got all the first 3 points, it's rapidly becoming expected. If you do any course now, I think you guys probably feel the pressure to have some video component to it. And you see that in product releases. It's not just a kind of PR text document. You'll have a video produced with the product release, etc., etc. So it's becoming more and more the norm. And I just wanted to share a couple of case studies with you where this is actually happening. Gronda is a client of Veed's. It is essentially a chef training. I'm going to say college, that's probably the wrong word. Company, certainly. And it does culinary masterclasses for very high-end chefs. So not the usual things that Gordon Ramsay's staff is, or the Jamie Oliver in my case. But, the really specialized, very technical staff. And it's really transformed the way that they are operating as a business. It used to be kind of a central body creating the content, and the kind of chefs going out and teaching people. The chefs themselves now have become the content creators. They're creating videos like social media, and they are the ones filming themselves. And that's allowed the business to scale hugely. It used to be reliant on a centralized video team. Now each employee themselves is their own little video production agency, if you like. And they've seen a huge reduction in time to create video, 60% reduction in time, 3 times faster subtitle editing and captioning, and 2 times better engagement. And when you're getting paid essentially for training, getting 2 times better engagement is huge. And another one, slightly more, maybe this kind of skewed towards marketing, but it's also worth talking about, because it shows the power of employee advocacy in the same way, a little bit like Gronda's using it. This was a press release that Veed did. In fact, it talks about the eye contact correction feature I mentioned earlier. And you can see in the top right, my colleague Arev reading her notes, but actually then we quickly tweak her eyes with AI, and she's looking directly at the camera. But it wasn't just her. We got an entire company to do it. And so lots of people in the company created different versions. You can see them below there. And they put it out on social media. And the reason that's so important is it's coming from them. Veed can push stuff out directly, but getting an individual's perspective on things, or interpretation, or view of the world, it has much stronger word of mouth, WM, which is much better trust signals. So people believe in it more, people listen to it more. They were able to reach a much larger audience. Again, coming back to this point that just Veed doing it centrally is great. We've got a large number of followers, but if you add up all our employees, they were able to reach a far greater number of people than we were. And then if you're ever putting training videos or how-tos or summaries of things out on social media, people doing it is preferred by the algorithms. So you get more promotion, you get more views, more engagement. And that's important because companies doing it, the social media platforms want the companies to pay for adverts. So they deliberately throttle your reach, but they want experts to do it. They want great content. They want influencers to do it. So it travels much further if it comes from employees. And again, the proof is in the pudding. Some stats for you. We got 1.4 million views, which is 88 times better than the kind of branded account. We've got 688 comments, 32 times better, and 254 reposts, which is 9 times better. So before we go to Q&A, I'm going to leave you with this quote, which is my favorite quote about tech generally. The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. William Gibson. I think coming back to the earlier start of this presentation, we see AI in the news. We see it in the PhD papers coming out of universities. It's all around us. But actually, I think maybe this audience apart, but the wider population of people is not using it regularly. And so I think it's very much exists, what we're going to see now is the adoption of it, and some fine tuning, if I'd like to say. So you don't end up with me in a terrible fitting Balenciaga coat. You end up with something that actually is valuable to you. So what's AI, the big kind of buzz, I think, is almost maybe peaked in many ways. I think almost people are getting tired of it, but it's becoming expected in many ways. But what we're seeing now is this transfer from these kind of market leading, best in class AI releases to something that actually people will use in production in their daily job. And that's what's going to be the biggest change in the next 6 to 12 months. Thank you. My name is Ben Wynne-Simmons, and I think we're going to hand back over to Andrew and we can do some Q&A.
Fabulous, Ben. Thank you so much. You can't see the chat, but the chat has been firing backwards and forwards.
Lots of controversial
comments and questions. It's just really, we've got a smart audience here who are just asking really smart questions. So I'll pick the first question up, for example. So Catherine, this is Catherine Willoughby. I think this is a really interesting question. Do users engage with AI avatar videos as much as with human delivered videos? And for her, it's an immediate skip. If she sees this, this kind of, animated kind of stuff. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Yes, this is coming back to the point. I think it splits an audience. Avatars currently. I think, I think it's incorrect to assume that human produced videos are better. Like, quite often I've seen tons which are a recording of a webinar, which is just terrible quality, bad internet connection, and I just can't hear it physically. So it's not even an option, and that happens quite often. But a thing I'm going to say, actually, the way I use it, and this is my top tip, I love the voiceovers. So people are quite good at detecting lips, and this slightly kind of lip syncing's off, which is slightly irritating, and I get that. I think it is getting better. As I said earlier, I think 6 months, I think it's worth reevaluating that. But the voices are actually really good. And particularly if you're doing quite often what I do is I do an introduction, me talking to camera like this, and then cut, and you're just showing the slides, and you just need a voice in the background. And again, I wouldn't use it for the entire video, but if you just need to tweak something, you can clone your voice and just do the filler words. And this is great, particularly if you're doing personalized stuff. That's not so common in training, but if you needed to kind of adjust something for a slightly different sector or different market, you've got 90% of it's already shot. You just need to fill in the top and tail. So that stuff is already really good for. Whether you want to do 30 minutes of an avatar talking to screen, probably not. But watch this space.
And it's interesting. So I'm going to move I'm not going to answer the questions in order, because obviously that's the wrong thing to do. But I'm going to pick up on that because there's a really interesting point from that. So I mentioned in the chat, I've got quite a distinctive voice. I've got quite a good voice for audio kind of thing. Am I going to lose my job? And that's been picked up by Michael. If we switch to AI generated videos, is there a risk for jobs? For example, in his previous employment, it was really important to have ethnically diverse presenters. Potentially people with disabilities. Are we at risk of excluding some people as a result of using these technologies? What are your thoughts on
that? So there's kind of two questions there: losing jobs and exclusion, and kind of lack of diversity. I think they're very well debated topics, right? People are well aware of them. Specifically, I mean, this is where AI becomes this kind of catch-all for lots of different things. AI in terms of subtitles, no one even asks about that, right? It's just a given. You're going to use AI for subtitles. You're not going to ask somebody to type them up for you just because that's a better way. It's not. That's kind of gone. AI for voice actors, Andrew, if that's your future profession, it's going to be tricky.
No, please don't say that.
You're not going to be doing those TV commercials anymore. Joking aside, I mean, what I think what happens is what the value of what somebody does changes. I think it'd be more emphasis not on the production of the content, is actually what the content is, which hopefully is actually the true value. the means of getting it across, whether it's video via text or PowerPoint, is a method of getting that information across. The real value is actually in the original content, and AI is unlikely to replace that. Mainly because it does stuff that's already known. It's quite generic. It averages out the internet, and so it's never going to be very specific. In fact, it's proven to be quite bad at very specific stuff, and specific to you or your industry or your company or what you're doing. So content production, no. In terms of the second question, kind of diversity and a mixture of voices, I don't think that will be an issue, particularly I think because people can make their own avatars. So if you want somebody of a particular background or accent or whatever, then you can ask them to create an avatar, and they can create it themselves and produce the videos. So it's more an accelerant of those people. It's more enabling them to create the content. Yes, does it mean that they will not be saying every single word in the video? Yeah, but that's not a bad thing. It means you'll be able to produce more content faster, change things, make it more engaging, better for your users. And so I take a relatively rosy take on that.
Okay, I'll bear that in mind for the next voiceover I get. Let's go on to question. Got a question from Ed here, which I think is tied into this partly, and it goes back to what you just said. We were talking before the session, and this idea of you're getting median responses, but what Ed sort of like picked up on part of that. Is there a risk we begin to lose our power of imagination, or do you think AI will create an explosion by enabling people to create? So I think it ties in with that median average, but actually, are we just then going to settle for more standard? What are your thoughts on that?
My advice actually is, every time I get slightly worried about job loss or anything in the future, go and use AI. You realize quite how limited it is in many ways right now. So, and I think there's certain things that it is going to become, will default to AI, and you see it with these Google searches now. You see Google starts putting this bit at the top. But right now, actually, most of the time, we just scroll straight past it. I know they're trying to push it, and they're it's going to get better. But right now, it's not. I don't quite believe it. There's a trust element, which is also huge in here, because you can't quite trust generative AI because it has this hallucination power. So if it's not being reviewed by a human, then there's, if you're doing anything that requires trust, i.e. a doctor or a lawyer or someone that you cannot get that wrong, then AI is not going to be the thing. In terms of content creation, coming up with ideas, I think I was having a debate with an architect about this. They were a teacher and they had issues with their students producing AI images, but quite quickly it becomes the norm. It becomes the new norm, and actually, therefore, you can recognize a mid-journey image. There is a certain aspect to it. People go, oh, that's an AI generated image. You can, not just the 6 fingers or whatever, but they've got something else slightly quirky or slightly wrong or slightly you've seen before. And so actually it ups the standard for the average, but I think the novel is always going to be interesting. And this is always the case of marketing. As soon as something becomes powerful, video is kind of like this, now videos become something that everybody can do. So it used to be, doing a TV commercial made you different. Well, frankly, everyone has got their own channel. Everyone's got the power to make videos. So now actually you've got to make a particularly good video or do something to break through the noise, and it constantly just moves forward. And then, sorry, there's lots of parts of this. In terms of creativity, the way you interact with it's quite interesting. I think it is quite good for creativity. And I'm going to go off on a tangent on this one a bit. Rodin, sculptor, he used to spend ages making tiny maquettes of little models, right? But actually, he then kind of moved to this meta level of sculpting, where he would take these very intricate models and then just cut arms and legs off and stick them together. And that allowed him to kind of create a whole nother level where he was able to produce entire sculptures from mini sculptures. And that's kind of what AI does. It stops you getting too involved in the weeds of creation. So if you want to, I want to talk broadly about this topic. Can you just write that up for me? And then you kind of top and tail it, and it will just fill in the details. So it's brilliant at that, and allows you to then think in a much bigger story block kind of sense. Yeah. So you can be creative at a different scale, and I see that quite often.
Yeah, the word's bricolage. So it's taking lots of different concepts and forming and putting them together. And I think that's something that we can use AI to do, and for prompt generating and actually asking it. So what what would be the best thing for me to be asking you? I think is quite good. And from an image perspective, I absolutely, I think there is an opportunity there. And actually, I think it's the second step. So you can ask it to produce something, but then from that, will it inspire something else? And I think that's where it's interesting. Just quick check. I've got one more question, which is probably the biggest question that needs to be asking is, given the power consumed by Gen AI for images, how much are we talking about for video from a sustainability issue? Are we talking about
energy-wise?
Yeah.
I mean, this right now quite high. AI video is always the heaviest medium. It's heavier than text, etc. But again, it follows the kind of laws of computing, and it halves every 6 months. So already the cost of this is plummeting. The chips are getting much faster. The efficiency of the chips, the models, the large language models which you hear about are enormous. Billions / trillions of different little nodes. Actually, the image generation ones can be much smaller, and then they're developing. You might have seen this with ChatGPT. They brought out the light version of their kind of heavyweight model. So actually, most of the time, you can run it on a simplified version. So yes, right now it's very costly to train, but once the training's done, it obviously it reduces a lot in terms of operating in the future. Is very, very different.
Yeah.
And I think a large chunk of these things are just going to get simplified and faster. I think we're at a very inefficient stage of AI. Like it's brute forcing it. The only way we've got it better is by going from millions of nodes to billions of nodes. It's a very inefficient way of doing things. And I think as we get more sophisticated, that will come straight back down.
Absolutely. There's loads of other there's brilliant conversation going on, and you can keep the conversation going after the session, by the way. So the chat window stays open. You can stay open. Everybody who's here, if you want to continue the conversation, we've got brilliant conversation going on about experience, about creating translation and subtitles. We've got people talking about using verbatim search in Google to avoid Gemini results coming back. We've got people talking about get the AI voice right to make mistakes and to say things wrong, mispronounce things, and actually attract people's attention and make it sound like it's a real thing. The question also, Ben, quite simply is, are you real? People are asking, or are you the AI version?
I've had that, guys. Yeah. You had to ask me to do something very specific. AI at the moment is very bad with hand gestures. It's quite bad with very smiley faces or big intonations. So that's the tell at the moment. But yeah, it's getting the way that it could be. It could not be me quite soon.
Fabulous. Please, everybody in the chat, put your thanks through to Ben. I assume if people want to connect with you, they can find you on LinkedIn, Ben. That's the easiest place.
Yeah, certainly on LinkedIn. So yeah, my name's a bit of a fiddle to spell, but I think you can probably see it somewhere this side here. And yeah,
we've been asked to count your fingers to see.
Yeah, I know. I actually almost cut one off the other day.
By hand.
I cut. So full 10.
Fabulous. Brilliant. Please let Ben know in the chat what you thought of the session. I can see that some people thought that was fabulous. Thank you, everybody, for your conversation. These sessions work so much better when we've got people having a conversation, which is exactly what you've done. So thank you for that. I'll be back at 3:30 where I've got Oliver Nussbaum with us, content as well. So fabulous. Thank you again, Ben. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you again this afternoon. Take care, everybody.